I've had the pleasure of working with him on and off for almost 30 years. And it's one of the gentlemen that I consider my mentors in this industry. I want to say to you, Mr. Craig Studnicki, thank you so much for hosting this event here for the past 2 years. We love having you here at Brickell City Center, and we love this whole general real estate community. You're very much a part of our past, our present, and hopefully our future. I just want to ask one little question. How many people here is it the first visit to Brickell City Center? Just curious. Raise hands. Only one?
Bad.
Two?
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, I invite you to come over and over to visit. I invite you to stop into our penthouse 4203 at Rise, which is very spectacular. And with further ado, I introduce a man that I think everybody here is here because of him. So with that, Mr. Studnicki, you've got the mic.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. How are we today? I guess nobody had anything to do this morning, huh? Wednesday after Memorial Day weekend, I'm surprised most of you are still even in town. Anyway, hi. We're going to spend some time this morning, probably about 45 minutes, and I'm hoping that the work that we put into this year's Miami report stimulates you, motivates you, or quite simply makes you feel very lucky that you hold a real estate license here in South Florida. We have, by the way, I am, in case you don't know who I am the CEO of ISG. I am the CEO also of a company called Related ISG. I work with my partner, Alex Vidal, who's the president of Related ISG International Realty. If you follow any of his Facebook Live things, you know what I mean. But let me tell you what the CEO is, in case I don't want any of you to get impressed with that. What I really am is the top sales guy inside my company. That's what CEOs are. That's what they should be. It's not about counting widgets. It's about keeping the focus on the ball. Sales particularly, because as a cousin of mine told me this morning, Jack Studnicki, nothing happens until someone sells something, which is incredibly true. Anyway, welcome to the 2019 Miami Report. We have some fun stuff here. Well, for those of you who haven't heard this presentation before, let me explain how this started. You've heard the expression that necessity is the mother of invention. I have been a part of ISG since its beginning, 26 years ago. It was started by my friend Jerry Kaufman, who's in the front row today. He handed the baton to me, and here I am. Somewhere around the year 2009. Now, some of you who have heard this presentation before, you're going to hear this part again, but it sets up even this year's Miami Report, so bear with me for a minute. I have also learned in my sales career that you can never sell anything without a sense of urgency. That makes sense, right? And the best way to create a sense of urgency is to create a sense of scarcity. If you can create a sense of scarcity, urgency is automatic. If you exhale, I promise you your next breath is an inhale. It's all about scarcity. But how in God's name does anyone create scarcity with those kinds of headlines? Now, this is 1 year after the great 2008. My mom and dad aren't here anymore. They were born in the early 20s. And as a kid, all I heard about was 1929, 1929. The Great Depression. Fortunately, we've never, anybody in this room, has had to experience anything quite like that. But we got close in 2008. We got really, really close. Lehman Brothers went out of business. AIG, the giant insurance company, nearly went out of business. So you had mortgage foreclosures in 2008, 2009. If AIG went out of business, it would have been significantly worse. 2008 was our 1929. You had it, hopefully you'll never see it again. The dust seemed to settle sometime around 2009. And CNN wrote this story. 21,000 condos. Defaulted inventory in Miami. Defaulted inventory that got built. Most of this stuff got sold in 01, 02, 03, right through 06. A lot of this stuff got finished. Buildings got finished in 08 and 09. Many of you that were in the real estate game then, you know that. And there was, in fact, a lot of defaulted inventory. But 21,000? 10 years supply. That's the thing that really triggered me. I sat around in ISG with my partners, and we asked ourselves, do we keep this going? Because we have to make rent every month. I got to make payroll every 2 weeks. There's no way you can create a sense of urgency with a 10-year supply. What the hell are we going to do? And we're not the only ones that had that conversation. All of you have the exact same. But we also thought to ourselves, this doesn't make any sense. We live here. 21,000 condos, a 10-year supply? No way. It just didn't make sense. So, very unscientifically, we strapped on our shoes, and we went neighborhood by neighborhood from Coconut Grove straight through West Palm Beach. And all this stuff was east of 95, by the way, in case you get confused. That's the territory that we studied. And we found out that our gut was right. There weren't 21,000 condos. There was a lot less. And it wasn't a 10-year supply. Here's, in fact, what's happened. There were 11,502 condos, and they were gone in 24 months. Gone. Now, for those of you that are good at math, that's around 5,500 sales between 2010 and 2011, because this report came out in September. That's a lot of selling, or that's a lot of buying. But I'll tell you how this landed on me, personally. I made myself a promise. I will never, ever, ever second-guess Miami again. I will never, ever, ever guess or second-guess its popularity around the world. Because in 2009, 10, and 11, there was no mortgage money in the United States. There was no mortgage money in Miami, of course, because we're part of the United States. Because you couldn't get a mortgage because you couldn't get an appraiser to give you a fair appraisal, because we were in an environment at that time that they call falling knives. No one wants to catch a falling knife. No one wants to buy a piece of property when you think prices are going down. Why buy now? I'll wait. Why buy now? I'll wait. Zero urgency. But clearly we couldn't get appraisals, we couldn't get mortgages. How in God's name then did we absorb 11,500 units in 2 years? Well, my friend Sergio Pintos, who is here, reminded me that in those days that the economies of South America are doing unbelievably well, particularly Brazil. And if you recall, in 2009, Standard & Poor's reduced the credit rating of the United States of America from AAA, which is as good as it gets, to AA. We're now back at AAA. But back then we were AA, and the dollar plummeted. The Brazilian economy was experiencing GDPs between 4, 5, and 6%. The Argentine economy was doing quite well as well. And because the dollar was low, and Venezuela was active back then. It was active back then, it was. And because the dollar was so low, their currencies were strong. They came up here, not with suitcases of cash, but metaphorically, with suitcases of cash. And they bought everything. They bought everything. And that's when I realized the popularity of Miami. Well, you've heard the expression that history repeats itself. And by the way, as a result of that, the next cycle began. The cycle that is now coming to an end. The cycle of this decade, which began in 2012 as a result of all of that inventory getting absorbed. And you know, it's been pretty nice until about a few years ago when the dollar went up, huh? Standard & Poor's changed credit rating to AAA. The US dollar started getting stronger and stronger. And today it's probably as strong as it's ever been. And we're experiencing a slowdown from South American sales, South and Central America. I'm not telling you anything you don't experience every day. I'm not telling you anything you wake up every morning wondering, when is that damn dollar going to get weak? Not anytime soon. Because fortunately, hello? I guess I should talk about the dollar. Somebody tell me Donald Trump is in here today. Sorry. I thought he was in Japan. We are living in a world at the moment where the U.S. economy is the strongest I've ever seen in my life. Stock market's doing quite well. Mortgage rates went down this year. Who expected that? And unemployment is at an all-time low. So anyone who deals with South American buyers or Central American buyers, they're expecting... No? Okay. Oh, that works. Okay. We put a man on the moon. We ought to be able to figure this out. Anyway, with the strength of the U.S. economy right now, it's bolstered. I'll do that? Okay. With the strength of the U.S. economy, it's doubtful that you're going to see the dollar decline anytime soon. What we have to hope for is that the South American economies rebound someday. And we'll get to that in today's presentation. But how do we sell real estate then in this environment? Particularly for those of you who do specialize in South American sales and Central American sales, and that's how you made your living in Miami, particularly in these last 5-6 years. We'll explain that today as well. But what really haunts me and drives me nuts and perhaps gives some strength to the Miami report are articles like the next one I'm about to show you, which proves that the cliche that history repeats itself is true. This came out 3 months ago in Miami Today. Miami Today, a newspaper that you see in every attorney's office, realtor's office, title agencies, you name it, every business in Miami gets that paper every day. 57-month supply of condos, a 5-year inventory. Now, they quoted a prominent real estate broker here in Miami, and because I like this guy so much, I'm not going to mention his name. But what is true is that a lot of you read this. What's also true is a lot of your clients read this. When you read it, you have no reason to get out of bed in the morning. How in God's name are you going to create urgency with a headline like that? And when your clients read it, you're back in a falling knife environment. There's no urgency. There is no way you can create a sense of scarcity. I'll wait. High dollar, articles like this, what are we going to do? Well, hopefully, today we can straighten some of that fragmented information out. I have the greatest respect for all of you, because I do what you do every single day. And I talk to a lot of you, particularly those who wind up at the W in Fort Lauderdale, if you're at Muse in Sunny Isles Beach, or here at Brickell City Center, those are some of ISG's listings. And I listen to some of the things you say to me, and I'm realizing a lot of you are buying into these headlines. And more than that, you're really confused about the facts. Because you hear stuff from this cocktail party or that cocktail party, or my best friend's cousin told me this. Well, what we're going to do today is straighten out all this information based on facts. And hopefully when we're finished, we'll all be selling Miami more or less the same way. Not based on the way Craig sees it, or ISG sees it, but the way the facts see it. Before we do that, my new partner, Veronica Gorson, has this idea about these 3D glasses. So let's have a little bit of fun. I need you to put your 3D glasses on, if you would. There, we're going to mix it up a little bit this year. We're going to roll the clock back to the 60s. And God, I wish you could see this from my perspective. It looks like you're about to see a science fiction movie. Look at this. That's your beautiful skyline of Brickell Avenue. And by the way, based on the article that I read today in The Real Deal, well, there's 10 projects that are slated to get built in the downtown core, which includes Brickell, downtown Miami, and Edgewater. Clearly, that skyline is about to change. We're calling this, I think I might have gone a little too fast, but it's okay, let's keep going. But no, we're not. We're calling this issue supply shock, and hopefully the 3D glasses bring some importance to the theme of this particular Miami report, because regardless of what you are hearing, we are about to hit an intersection between supply and demand that's going to cause the world to quickly understand we are running out of supply. 5 years? I don't think so. And when I finish the presentation, maybe you can help me find it, because there is no way the tea leaves say 5 years. Next slide is 2101. There are 4 numbers we'd like you to pay attention to this morning that I think will straighten out or defrag all that crazy information out there that causes some confusion. If I asked you, any of you, before you got up this morning, how many developer condos you think are for sale from Coconut Grove up to Fort Lauderdale, once again, east of 95? And I've asked this question a lot in the last few weeks. I've heard 5,000, I've heard 10,000. Anyway, it's 2,100. That's it. That's how many condos exist, broad developer inventory from Coconut Grove up to Fort Lauderdale. 902. This is another number we would like you to pay attention to today. 902. That is the daily population growth of the state of Florida. We will get into that in some more detail. Forgive me, but you got to see how you all look. You look fantastic with the glasses on. 2020. That is next year. That is the start of the decade. More importantly, that is the year that most of the prominent developers in Miami, Swire Properties, PNG, Related, Terra, that's when they would like to see the next cycle begin. That's when they would like to see the next cycle begin. 2025. This is in part what adds to the, God bless you, the gravitas of supply shock. Because we're not building 20-story condos anymore like we built when I first moved here about 30 years ago. No, we're going high. And if you read today's article in The Real Deal, and they talked about the 10 properties, the 10 high-rise properties, which includes Swire's One Brickell City Center right here on 8th and Brickell. It includes PMG's property, the Waldorf Astoria in downtown Miami, which is just about 100 stories. We're not building 20-story buildings anymore. So if the developers can start in 2020, pre-selling, the earliest we're going to see significant inventory come to Miami, the earliest is 2025. So these are the 4 numbers we'd like you to focus on today. These 4 numbers I think will defrag, or I should say organize, the facts in a way that you can sell to a client. You can now take your glasses off because now we're going to start doing some work. When I manage my sales team, and I ask them what's going on, did you call that broker that specializes in Argentina? What about the broker from Brazil? How about that guy from New Jersey? 4 out of 5 times, perhaps, my sales agents will say, Craig, they just don't have any clients. I think that's true sometimes, but I don't believe that's true all the time. We believe at ISG, it's not that they don't have clients. They need a new story. You need a reason to get on the phone and call your clients in whatever country they may live in, or whatever state they may live in, even if they live across the street. But you need that story grounded in facts. And we're hoping today, by the time we finish this 45 minutes together, you got that new story. Because I have a feeling there are people in your electronic Rolodex that you want to call, you really want to call, you just don't know what to tell. Hopefully today, we're going to give you something to tell. Because we're in this together. This is not ISG against you. This is ISG with you, as we've tried to demonstrate over the last 10 years when we produced this Miami report. We share this information because I'm hoping that we all kind of more or less sell Miami kind of the same way. Not based on opinion, based on fact. So let's go. In this cycle, which began in 2012, because, by the way, you don't need your 3D glasses anymore. Unless you really like wearing them, that's a different thing. If that's the case, I've got a 1-800 number you should call. They'll straighten you out. So as we talked about earlier, from 2010 and 11,500 units of defaulted inventory was absorbed. Wow, is Miami popular. Wow, is Miami popular. In this cycle, we developed 19,868 units from Coconut Grove up to Fort Lauderdale, 89% of which are currently sold, leaving 2,100 for sale. 5 years of inventory. Listen, if you slice and dice 2,100 units, slice and dice it, neighborhood by neighborhood, this is not a lot of inventory. On Brickell Avenue, I can tell you, just as an example, there's 145 units left at Reach and Rise. There are 3 apartments left at Echo Brickell. 3, and that's it. And by the time I get deeper in today's presentation, you're going to realize that there's nothing coming anytime soon. The inventory is in reality shockingly low. This is what has happened in the last few years without South America. Without South America. Why do I say without South America? Because the dollar's high. It's not that South Americans aren't buying, they just slowed way down. Look at what happened in 2016. The 19,000 units that were developed turned into 6,500. And a year later, 5,100. A year later, 3,800. January of this year, 2,498. We have been, just coincidentally, absorbing about 1,340 units per year without the muscle, without the punch from South America. How have we been doing that? Well, in part because of organic domestic demand, and in part because South America hasn't stopped, they just slowed down. We took the 2,100 units, and we broke it out for you in 3 different categories. Now, the reason we did this, I'm saying this with all respect, but I hear a lot of realtors, frankly, refer to developer inventory as pre-construction inventory. Pre-construction inventory. You know, in today's high US dollar environment, it is very difficult to launch pre-construction. It's very hard to get money out of South America, and the South Americans are the primary market that like to buy pre-construction. The perfect example is related. About a year and a half ago, George Perez and Carlos Rosso took the very successful brand in Fort Lauderdale known as Auberge, and they brought it here to downtown Miami. They bought an office building opposite Adrian Art Center. They hired Architectonica. They designed perfectly sized apartments. They priced them more or less around $700 a foot. And George said, go. And we went. And we did the best we could to pre-sell that building. The best we could. And believe me, Carlos Rosso is a very aggressive, very hard-working guy. And I don't know if it was 6 months later or 8 months later, George pulled the plug. Pulled the plug because you couldn't get money out of South America to reach the pre-sale requirement. What's a pre-sale requirement? Most developers are subjected to 2 conditions before they can break ground. 2, not 5, 2. 1 is you're going to have to sell 50 to 60% of the total inventory before you can close on a construction loan. That's the pre-sale process. That's the pre-sale target. Secondly, construction lenders have created an underwriting guideline, which now in this cycle requires us to convince a buyer to put 50% down prior to closing. Now that worked like a charm in 2012, 2013, 2014, when the dollar was a little bit weak, and the South Americans were buying like crazy. The dollar went up. We couldn't get the money out of South America. You know, Miami, I've come to learn, is the easiest city in the world to sell in South America. Miami has become a brand. Miami is almost a metaphor. It makes you feel alive. Can I tell you a personal story? And by the way, alive is different for a 20-year-old compared to a 40-year-old, compared to a 60-year-old, compared to an 80-year-old. Alive means something different to everybody in every generation, but nevertheless, Miami has become that place. You say Miami and the reaction is amazing. If I could tell you a personal story, just allow me 2 minutes of a personal indulgement. My son and his wife just gave birth 4 months ago to little Luke Stepnicki. But a year ago, my son said, Dad, we go on golf trips every summer. I said, Dad, this is going to be the last golf trip we can take for a while. Yeah, you're right, your wife's pregnant, so what do you want to do? Let's go to Ireland. Okay, we are of Irish descent, so we went to Ireland, to the Emerald Isle. A week of wonderful golf. Now, if you don't know anything about golf, typically you play in groups of 4 people. We call them foursomes. And Stephen, my son, and I would get to the first tee, and the starter, that's what they call these guys, the nanners, all the guys that get off on the first tee, would introduce us, hook us up with 2 other people. And here's how it always went. They would ask my son, where do you live? My 32-year-old testosterone-filled son would say, hey, I live in New York City. He's very proud of that. His chest got expanded for some reason. And then they would turn to Dad. Where do you live? And I just love this. It happened. We played golf for 6 days, and this happened 6 days in a row. I live in Miami. And you wait that 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. Right? If you were here, you would talk, you can see you all right now. This big smile comes on your face. And I think I've told some of you before, I don't know if they're happy for me. I don't know if they're jealous as hell. I don't know. You wouldn't either if you were me. There's no way to tell. But New York City doesn't get that reaction. There is no other city in the world that gets the reaction that Miami gets, particularly in South America. Particularly. It's like selling a Disney World ticket to an 8th grader. It's not hard. But people with money have money because they're very good at managing their money. And the South Americans that love Miami mostly are wealthy people. And there's no way they're trading their Brazilian reais or their Argentine pesos in a high dollar environment to jump on a pre-construction because you think it's a good idea. Sorry, it didn't work. When George pulled the plug, a lot of guys followed. BMG slowed down, Terra slowed down, Swire slowed down, everybody slowed down. Waiting for what? I'll explain that. And I'll tell you exactly what they're waiting for. They're waiting for one of 2 things. Not both, one or the other. They're waiting for the 2,100 units of standing inventory to get close to zero. Not zero, but close to zero. When it gets down to zero, then they will come back into the market. And then we have a story to tell the buyers in South America that we are running out of inventory. We have tremendous demand in Miami. And despite what's going on with the dollar, you might want to jump on this while you can. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes that they are. The 2019 numbers have surprised me. I think they're going to surprise you and hopefully stimulate you, motivate you to realize South America is alive. The dollar is obnoxiously high, but they are buying. But these developers that I just mentioned, they're going to wait till next year. They're going to wait till the 587 units that we call delivered are mostly sold. These are units like we have in Reach and Rise. Brand new apartments, never lived in, finished, brand new developer inventory. And look at that, it's now 96% sold. That's 587 units, folks, between Coconut Grove and Fort Lauderdale. Supply shock? Probably a lot less than you thought when you woke up this morning. Under construction. That's 1,300 units of unsold inventory. Not very many. We're talking about properties like Aston Martin, downtown Miami, 1000 Museum in downtown Miami, Missoni at Estates in Edgewater, Turnberry Ocean Club, Casa Armani in Sunny Isles Beach. They will be delivered soon, but they are under construction. And by the way, every single one of those projects I mentioned might take a little while to sell. It is our opinion at ISG that we believe the standing inventory, these 587 units, have maybe 12 months of life and that's it. We think that the stuff that's under construction will take a little longer, simply because of price points. 5 years? No way. 5 years? No way. A couple of years? Probably. These buildings that I mentioned are spectacular buildings. They're trophy assets, but they're expensive. It costs a lot of money to build these buildings today, and it's going to take some time. Look at pre-construction. There are 183 units of what we call pre-construction. I have never seen that in Miami. And I don't think any of you have either. In the 30 years I've lived here, I've always enjoyed this little life cycle of condominium development because that's the business ISG is in. In other words, what I mean is there's always a number of units that are in pre-sale mode. There's a number of buildings, rather. There's a number of buildings that are under construction. And then there's another number of buildings that are being delivered. And this life cycle just continues. But it stopped. And it stopped because of the example I gave you about Auberge. And it stopped because developers like Swire, related to PMG, they want to wait till that number gets close to zero. Because then we have a new story to tell all of our friends in South America. What about domestic demand? Trust me, we'll get to that. So what has the dollar done to future supply? Look at this. Most of you are looking at the high dollar as it relates to your frustration in terms of getting a South American or a Central American buyer to buy something. Now let's look at it from the developer's perspective. They know they're having a problem launching. They know they are. Look what the dollar did. In 2012, when this cycle started, look at that number. We had 15 groundbreakings. 15 condos broke ground between Coconut Grove and Fort Lauderdale. Followed by 20 the following year. Look at 2014, 23 groundbreakings. I think Ryan Shear is here. That's the year we broke ground on Echo Brickell. We had a hell of a lot of fun in 2014. The next year wasn't so bad. Followed by 14, followed by 11. Oops, what happened last year? There were 4 groundbreakings in South Florida. 4. 2000 Ocean in Hallandale. 4 Seasons in Sunny Isles Beach, the Estates at Aquilina. 4 Seasons, sorry, in Fort Lauderdale. The Estates at Aquilina in Sunny Isles Beach and Glass House in the Grove. 4? That's like 0. This year, 57 Ocean on Miami Beach, yes, it broke ground. Ocon Tower in downtown Miami, they say they're going to break ground, so they put it on the list. Una Residences, right here on Brickell. The same developer that broke ground on Missoni, we believe he's going to break ground. Smart Brickell has broken ground. And Yotel Pad in downtown Miami, developed by David Arditi and One World, Peggy Fucci, they handled the sales. Great job. And they're going to break ground. The best we can tell from all of the research we've done, 0 next year. 0. Why? Because of the dollar. If we had the dollar, not maybe back where it was in 2012 to 2013, but if we had it somewhere in the middle, oh my God, I promise you, this year you probably see 10 to 15 groundbreakings followed by the same next year. But we don't. And what this is causing is a shockingly lower level of supply than most of you realize. Let me add to the point. This slide. You know, it takes 9 months to make a baby. Most of you know that. But you may not know how long it takes to make a building. When I moved here a long time ago, I think I told you earlier, a high-rise building was 20 or 25 stories. And here's how it worked. Whether the developer hired me or any of my competitors, Fortune, Cervera, whoever they hired, if you're building 20 to 25 stories and you're putting 100, 150 apartments in there, it took 1 year to reach the pre-sale requirement, half the building, and 2 years to build. It took 3 years. Have a nice day, that's it. But we're not building 20, 25 story buildings anymore. I just said Swire wants to build One Brickell City Center eventually. 85 stories, maybe 90. Ryan Shear at PMG, they want to build a 99 or 100-story building in downtown Miami called the Waldorf Astoria. That's the Empire State Building in Manhattan, for context. These buildings take a while, and they're putting hundreds of units in these buildings. This is, in our opinion, best case scenario. Meaning, you hire me or any of my competitors, it's going to take 2 years to reach the pre-sale, at least. That's running as fast as we can. And then we're adding 3 more years past 2022. That's assuming we can start next year. If developers can start pre-sale programs next year, and we're successful, developers can break ground in 2022, add 3 years to these super tall buildings, minimum. And I just happen to know it took PMG 3 years to build Echo Brickell. That was 65 stories. How long does it take to build 80? How long does it take to build 100 stories? I don't know. I'm not a construction expert. What I'm trying to share with you, though, this, in our opinion, is best case scenario. The dollar has not just slowed down South American sales. The dollar has slowed down developers' ability to build more supply. So the supply pipeline is a lot shorter, a lot tighter than you may have realized when you woke up this morning. And this is why we call this issue supply shock, because we're running out of supply. And when you consider the demand curve, which is perhaps the most exciting part of today's presentation, I think, this is Craig, not necessarily ISG, I think whether it's 18 months or 2 years from now, we could have an intersection where demand outpaces supply. And unless something changes with the business model of high-rise condos, you tell me where you think prices might go if demand continues. MLS. So as you know, ISG is handling sales here at Reach and Rise. And when I do this part of the presentation, the first part, so many realtors say, what about MLS, Craig? What about MLS? There's all kinds of inventory in MLS. All right, well, let's talk about that. I don't think that there's as much there as you think either. So let's start with this slide. I asked Athena Rosano, who does all of the research for ISG, Athena, how many housing units are there in Dade County? Same number for Broward. Housing units. Is a condo? It's a house? It's a townhouse? Heck, it's a trailer. It's a rental unit. It could be a multifamily apartment building. All housing units. Anything that can keep the rain off your head. Well, in Miami-Dade, there's a little over 1 million, and in Broward, there's 823,000. So what do these numbers mean? Let me put it back in context. I've been doing this, I've been selling real estate for 40 years. Almost too long, but nevertheless, I kind of like it. And here's what I've learned along the way, a few golden nuggets. Any given building or any given community that has 5% or less of its inventory in MLS, in resale land, that's called a seller's market. They've got the edge, there's not much to choose from. Got it? But that same building or community that has 10% or more, 10% or more, oh, that's a seller's market. I mean, the buyer's market, excuse me, just the opposite. When you have that kind of inventory in MLS, the buyers have the edge because they have a lot to choose from. Okay, so you look at these numbers in Miami, and Miami-Dade, and Fort Lauderdale, Broward, we're way under 5. And I, as you know, I'm a partner with Alex Vidal, with Related ISG. I get to talk to those realtors a lot. And I'm well aware of how fast and how well single-family homes are selling. Selling really fast. To who? We'll touch on that in a second. Houses are going quickly. Condos in certain areas. You got a point. There may be a buyer's opportunity right now, in the resale land. Here's an example. What we did was we looked at all, just as a sample, if you took a statistics course ever in your life, You know, when you come up with a decent sample, it's usually very telling to the rest of the entire data. So what we did here was we simply took all of the buildings that were developed in this cycle that have been finished. We didn't include the stuff that's under construction, obviously. We didn't include the stuff that's in pre-construction. There's nothing to resell there yet because the buildings have not been delivered. 15,000 units have been delivered in these neighborhoods, in this cycle, in this decade. And 15% of them are in MLS. That's a lot. That means buyer's market. Right now, buyer's market in condo land. No doubt about it, we surrender. We surrender. For the moment. And why? Well, a lot, in my experience, I got to sell a lot of stuff for PMG, all their stuff actually. I got the stuff to sell for Swire. I got to sell stuff for Related. There were so many Brazilians and Argentines and Venezuelans that were buying 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I didn't think they were investors. No way. Not when they're putting 50% down before closing. No, they were asking us too many questions about charter schools and magnet schools, and universities, and where's the closest hospital. These are not the questions you get from investors. These are the questions you get from people who want to move here. But something changed in the world. The dollar went up. The GDPs in the countries I just mentioned, like Argentina and Brazil, whoa, did they contract. Now all of a sudden people need to sell. It's a great opportunity in a way for them to sell because they can sell their apartments for the same price they paid pre-construction. And given the spread of the currency, they make money. I know you all understand that. You've heard it 1,000 times. And that is in part what's fueling that kind of inventory in MLS at the moment. Please pay attention, if you would, to that middle number. 2368. 2,368 brand new units delivered in this decade are currently in MLS. And those 2,368 are included in the macro numbers. I asked Athena how many condos are currently active in MLS in Dade County and Broward County, which includes those 2,300 units I just mentioned. We rounded it up. It's like 21,003 units. Call it 21,000. Rounded it down, actually. In the last 3 years, Dade County and Broward County have absorbed 24,800 units every year. Every year. To who? We'll get there. Every single year. So we're saying to you all today, that's 1 year of inventory. You don't believe me? Want to add 6 months? Add 6 months. Add a year. Tell me it's 2 years of inventory. But where's the 5 years in condo land? Where is it? And if the sales keep humming the way they're humming, that 15% number you just saw on the previous slide, when that drops into 10%, by the way, 5 to 10% is what we call equilibrium. It's a nice place to be. We're hardly ever there. Right, Rosie? I mean, you're either in a buyer's market or a seller's market. You never seem to get it all right at the same time. Equilibrium? I think it's happened about 5 times in my entire career. It's either one extreme or another. Doesn't matter if you live in Miami, New York, San Francisco. That's just the way the ball bounces in real estate. That's condos. I got this information, not just from Athena, but from Alex Vidal. We got a Q&A of Alex on the back page of this year's Miami report. So Alex, what about single-family homes? Well, there are currently 13,000 houses on the market in Dade and Broward County. And we've been selling, the entire real estate community, we've been selling 32,000 houses a year, every year, for the last 3 years. So we're saying, just by simple math, that's 5 months of inventory. You want to add 6 months, be my guest. But where's the 5 years? Where is the 5 years? Now I got a story to tell you about this. I was thinking about this a few months ago when I had a meeting with Related ISG. I said, I want you to follow this. It's a bit of a silly example, but I think it's true. You know, when developers put a lot of inventory on the market, I want you to think of this as 2 planets spinning in the solar system. When developers put a lot of inventory in the market, this is the developer planet. Ooh, doesn't spin. There are parties, there's champagne. We have a hell of a lot of fun. But that doesn't mean the MLS resale planet ever stops. It keeps spinning. It keeps turning. It keeps turning. It keeps turning. When the developers put a lot of inventory in the market, there's no doubt this slows down a little bit, but it never, ever stops. But if developer inventory is starting to decline, in fact, at an accelerated rate, given the demand curve that we're experiencing, is it possible that this resale thing is picking up steam? while this is losing steam? Is it possible? So Athena did some research, and here's what she found out. And once again, it's a bit of a sample, but it's very telling. The yellow line is developer inventory, and you see how fast it's declining. And we just made the point to all of you. You're not going to see any significant developer inventory until the earliest 2025. That's 6 years from now. 6 years. And that, folks, is our best case scenario. It could easily be 7. I'm not talking about hundreds of units. Miami and Fort Lauderdale needs thousands of units. We need a new way to finance the construction of these buildings, because if we don't, that yellow line is going to hit zero in about 18 months. Well, look what's happened to MLS. In 2016, there were 88 resales, closings in these new buildings that were developed in this decade. The following year, it jumped to 259. Last year, 455. At the pace we're on this year, we're going to be at 638. You see how it's accelerating? So I was wondering, if this planet is slowing down, does this planet speed up? And based on the numbers, it is. Because that's the only place that we realtors are going to be able to fish for a property from all of the people that are moving to South Florida for a long, long time. Supply shock. Demand. Let's get to the demand curve. There are a number of people that love to talk about supply as if they are experts, and some of them are. Guys like Jack McCabe. One fellow, we all know about Peter Zalewski, God bless Peter. Peter's the one that gave so much importance to the Miami report, I think. But there's another guy named Tony Graciano. He runs a company called Integra. He's really good. I really respect his work a lot. I'll be honest with you, he uses a lot of ISG's work. We use some of Integra's work, we put it together. Does he have the condominium numbers we have? No. But there's no way he could. We're partners with Related in the resale business. I handle all of PMG's work. I handle all of Swire's work. I'm not saying this to come off in a braggy way. What I'm trying to tell you is we get their sales reports. I didn't get this information from having a beer with somebody at a bar. We get the sales reports. We summarize it all together. Hell, even David Martin from Terra, he sends me his sales reports because he doesn't want us to put the wrong information in the Miami report. So when I stand here today in front of all of my fellow realtors and I say there's only 2,100 unsold condos between Coconut Grove and Fort Lauderdale, that's a fact. There won't be 2,100 a month from now because people are buying. But that's where it is as of May of 2019. And there is no way Tony Graciano can get that number right because that is simply because he doesn't have the access to the information I have. Make sense? Okay. Population, demand. Where are the buyers coming from? And what makes us think it's really going to continue? You hear about tax refugees to New York. You hear about maybe Mexico is coming back. Well, let's talk about that. I have a feeling when I finish this part, you're going to be more enthused and more bolstered about the demand curve, and perhaps like me, more concerned about the supply curve. Let's go. It starts with, I got to put things kind of in perspective. Some of you may be, I'm going to go through the world population growth, and you may be asking yourselves, as hey Craig, I'm a realtor in South Florida. What's going on with the world? How in God's name does that affect me? Give me a couple minutes. I promise you it does. I promise you it does. We human beings have been walking the planet Earth for tens of thousands of years. Our ancestors, all over the planet. And yet it wasn't until about 100 years ago, 1914, that the world reported 1.5 billion people on the planet. 1.5 billion. 100 years later, just 100 years later, which is a grain of sand on the beach, we added 6 billion people to the planet. That's awesome. That's almost scary, awesome. Because demographers call that exponential growth. It's simply feeding on itself. In another 30 years, by the year 2050, we're adding another 2 billion people. Another 2 billion. Fastest growing country in the world, you all probably know, is China. The second fastest growing country in the world is India. What you may not know is that the third fastest growing country in the world right now is the United States. And it doesn't matter who occupies the White House. We are growing, as demographers refer to it, exponentially. Build walls, don't build walls. People are coming, people are having babies, and we're growing. Here's how this growth curve affects the United States. 100 years ago, we recorded 100 million people. That's how many people lived in the good old USA. Fast forward to today, you're 326 million. In another 30 years, you're heading to 400 million. And there's no stopping it. There's no stopping. These numbers come from the U.S. Census Bureau. They've been double-checked, triple-checked. There's simply no stopping it. Florida. How does all this affect Florida? It all relates to one another. So I'm getting to the realtors here in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Just bear with me. So in Florida, I think a lot of you heard me say this before, but 100 years ago, we had 880,000 people living in the state of Florida. We were pretty much empty. There was nobody here. I mean, nobody. I think the only people that were here were the industrialists of the U.S. that owned mansions on what many of you call Millionaires Row on Collins Avenue. It's called Millionaires Row because 100 years ago, there were mansions on the beach. And they were owned by families like Firestone and Carnegie and Mellon and Rockefeller. And that's how that part of Collins Avenue became known as Millionaires Row. And you know when they came here? December, January, February, March, and then boom, they're back to the Hamptons in New York. And there was nobody else here until the next December. Well, look what happened. From 1914 to 1967, in just about 50 years, we added 6 million people to Florida. So I actually looked this up myself. And after I read the 5th article, I finally surrendered. This is because of air conditioning. I know it's simple. I know it's got to be more complicated than that. But no, we invented, whatever. We created air conditioning, and suddenly it became a lot more comfortable living in Florida year-round. And look how people responded. Oh my God, let's move all the way to 2018. We're at 21.3 million. Hell, we passed the population of New York 3 years ago. People are coming to Florida. People are definitely coming to Florida. The U.S. Census does not take Florida out to the year 2050. Believe me, we looked, we couldn't find it. It does take us to the year 2040. We're headed to almost 29 million people. And we've done the math for you. So I'll save you a little bit of arithmetic. If the U.S. Census is right, if the continued population growth of the state of Florida holds, we will continue to grow over the next 20 years between 900 to 1,000 people every single day. The demand curve is extraordinary. We didn't call this issue in my report demand shock. We called it supply shock for a very good reason. Now this part takes some explaining. There's a man named Edward Trellis who works for my partner, Ron Gregorson. He creates these magnificent graphics in the Miami Report. He created the cover of this year's Miami Report, which I think is a piece of art. Let me go down and try to explain this. I think this takes some explaining. Remember the old Verizon commercial? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? We kind of try to duplicate that with these yellow circles, which 20 years ago showed the centers of the United States where the population was growing. And 20 years ago, California led the chart, 1,381 people a day, followed by Texas at 884 a day, followed by Florida at 823 a day. Look at New York. 20 years ago, New York was growing by 580 people a day. Now, U.S. Census Bureau stuff, what does that mean? It's births minus deaths, because that happens. People moving into a state minus people moving out of the state equals X. Got it? Not very complicated. That's how they measure it. 20 years ago, California led the chart. Florida wasn't bad at it. We were number 3. California was in. New York was still humming. At 580 a day, New Jersey right behind it at almost 200 a day. 10 years later, Texas replaced Florida. They became number 1. California dropped to 994. Florida dropped a lot. Florida dropped a lot. Why did Florida drop a lot? It was 2008. People weren't moving here. Americans were frozen in fear. Me too. Because I never thought I'd have a 1929, and that's what it felt like in 2008. And I found out by the numbers I wasn't alone. Nobody was doing anything in 2008. New York was still humming along at 430 people a day. And we reflected in these population circles, although you are seeing the Midwest start to get tight. And then look what happened last year. For the first time in the history of New York, negative population. For the first time in the history of Illinois, which cradles Chicago, negative population growth. Connecticut, -3 again. California's interesting. Look at this, 20 years ago, California was growing by 1,300 a day, and then 994 a day, and then 342. What the hell's going on in California? To my shock and surprise, we sold families from Los Angeles condominiums here in Brickell City. And one of them I was able to, one of them I always lose weight when I make these presentations. And one of them I was able to ask about, happy you're buying here, congratulations. So you're moving here, or is this a second home? It's one of my favorite qualifying questions, by the way. And the answer was, no, we're kind of done with LA. So I said, taxes, huh? Because that's the easy one, that's the low-hanging fruit. Yeah, but did you see Malibu on television last summer? It was on fire. Did you see Brentwood, California, the summer before? Now, Brentwood, if you're not familiar with it, is right next to Beverly Hills. The wealthiest people on the west coast of the United States live there. And despite the strong infrastructure that they have in those places, they couldn't stop those natural disasters. It's getting very hot and dry in California this summer, and this family had it. Well, when we looked at the numbers in California, they're having the same amount of births, unfortunately the same amount of passings. They're not having as many people moving in as they used to, but they're having a hell of a lot of people move out. And I am not here to tell you that California is going to be your savior to South America, but they're coming to South Florida in small numbers because the climate in South Florida more or less kind of mimics Southern California. But look at these numbers. Texas is strong number 1, Florida is a strong number 2. These 3 states, it's what we call the canary in the coal mine. When you read more about this stuff right now, almost everyone is predicting that New York's numbers this year will double. Maybe -250, possibly -350 a day. New Jersey, which is still enjoying +55 a day, now they're going to be in red territory this year, which will be reported next year. Where are they going? Here's a simple explanation. If you drew a horizontal line through the center of the United States and matched that with the projections from the Census Bureau, here's what it means. The population of the United States is in fact growing. We're heading to 400 million people in the next 30 years. But it's shifting to the south. Some of it is being motivated by high taxes, for sure. Some of it is being motivated by really crappy weather. And unfortunately, some things going on with Mother Nature. Some of them stop off, particularly on the Northeast, they like to stop off in the Carolinas. I can't blame them. Carolinas are lovely. But make no mistake about it, the majority of them are coming to Florida, to the state of Florida. Last year, 902 people a day. Whether they chose Naples or Tampa or Orlando or Miami or West Palm, it doesn't really matter, because I promise you Miami is getting more than its fair share. So, realtor with the license, and you're wondering how my explanation of the world and the United States and Florida affects you, here you go. 902 people moved here every day last year. 45% of them came to what we call South Florida. 25% just to Miami. 12% to Broward, Fort Lauderdale. 8% to Palm Beach. 25% is roughly between 200 and 220 people every single day last year came to Miami-Dade County. And as you may have heard me say before, you may have not known these numbers when you woke up this morning, but your road rage is getting a little out of control. I get nervous when I drive in the car with Jerry Kaplan because he screams at everybody. And I keep trying to tell him, Jerry, there's so many people moving here, they come in with cars. And no, they're terrible drivers, but you gotta relax. When I come here for a meeting in Brickell City Center, I live in Sunny Isles Beach, I gotta give myself during the week a solid hour and 15 minutes to get here. On a Saturday or Sunday, 25 minutes, it's a breeze. They're coming with cars. Do we need to do something about moving the masses around? Well, if the demand curve continues, you betcha. Brightline was one small step for man, but from an infrastructure standpoint, there's no stopping this demand. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to move these people around. So here's the summary of the big three. The big three. Well, by the way, the big three is what U.S. Census Bureau refers to: California, Texas, and Florida. I'm going to be a little bit bold and suggest that this time next year, they won't be talking about the big three. I think they're going to be talking about the big two. Because if California continues its slide, and every indicator says it will, you're going to be talking about Texas and Florida and Texas. There's no state income tax in Florida and Texas. That we know. And that is undoubtedly perhaps the major driving force. But that, weather, you name it, they're coming. And the tea leaves said there's going to be more of them. That's part of the demand curve. Now let me give you the other. A year ago, this is international. Is international completely at zero? No way. No way. My friend Sergio Pintos helped me put this together. A year ago, there were a lot of presidential elections in South America which changed South America. Let's start with Mexico. They elected President Obrador, a socialist, very much to the left. Very much. I've heard some of my realtor friends, Cecilio, suggest that this could be the next Hugo Chavez. Now, I don't know if that's true, but he's very much a socialist. And the bottom line is, at the moment, despite the obnoxious difference between the US dollar and the Mexican peso, he's scaring money out of Mexico. And most of that money at the moment is going to two places: Houston, Texas, and Miami, Florida. Houston, Texas, and Miami, Florida. I'm not suggesting you move to Texas. I have family there. It's hot as hell. You think it's hot in Miami? It's terrible in Texas. Stay put. Because if we do our jobs right, we'll get our fair share. Colombia's back. They got the same problem between the dollar and the Colombian peso. But a year ago, they had a presidential election. And President Duque won. He was the centrist conservative guy, who at the moment has a very low approval rating, particularly among the wealthy, because he is taxing the hell out of the rich in Colombia. Ask any Colombian, make sure you've got some time, because they will go on and on and on about that. But here's the real point. He ran against a guy named Petro. Petro was a leftist, very much to the left. A friend, you might say, of the FARC. That may sound like an exaggeration, but I read that. And what was really scary is he got 45% of the popular vote. 45%, 8.5 million votes. He got that close votes to the White House of Colombia. He got that close. The other side of Colombia is Venezuela. And my Colombian buddies are saying with sadness, and I'm there, oh my God, what if we are the next, you know what? And that's scaring money out of Colombia. And when people in Colombia or any country in South America get nervous, Miami always wins. I know that sounds rather arrogant. I don't mean to come off like that, but that's a fact. My late mother, God bless her, she used to say, Craig, there's never an ill wind that doesn't blow somebody some good. And when conditions certainly politically change in South America, that bad wind blows our way, and it blows some good to the people in the real estate game here in South Florida. Brazil, they had a presidential election as well. President Bolsonaro is, I think, a cousin of Donald Trump. He's as far to the right as you can possibly get. And God knows he is promising some great things for Brazil, but hell, he just got elected. Most Brazilians are expecting to see the return of GDP around 4 or 5% under his leadership. And let's hope it happens. Because we could use the 900-pound gorilla of South America to start buying property again here in Miami. It hasn't happened yet. We're selling Brazilians, yes. You're all selling some Brazilians. But we're not getting Brazilians like we had hoped by the month of May. Maybe it's the second half of this year. Maybe it's a year from now, before the policies of that new president take effect. He has put an end to a lot of those costly social programs that drain the treasury of Brazil. So perhaps it's on the right track. But it's not there yet, not in the numbers that we need. Argentina, for me, was a total shock and surprise. We are selling families from Argentina condominiums at River City Center. I never expected it, given the weakness of their economy, together with the, once again, that difference between the US dollar and the Argentine peso. But they're experiencing somewhere between 30 to 50% inflation this year. I can't imagine what it would be like in the United States if we had a 30 to 50% inflation. The stock market would crash, the dollar would crash, but we would all be out of work. That's a ridiculous inflationary rate. If you think and Argentines have told me, you think the obnoxious difference between the Argentine peso and the US dollar is bad now, wait, it's only going to get worse. Their president, President Macri, when he got elected, they called him the JFK of Argentina. Good-looking, charismatic, well-spoken, great ideas. It's not working. And in fact, he may be paving the runway for the former president, Cristina Kirchner, to come back, which is not good for the financial system of Argentina, and every Argentine will tell you that. I'm putting this up because we're selling condominiums to people in these countries. And I didn't have these countries 1 year ago. Neither did you. I'm not alone here. Everybody was complaining last year. The South American market's dead. It's dead. I heard that word many, many times, but it's not. It was maybe a year ago, not dead, quiet. But this year it's back. And here's a little hint that I'll share with my realtor friends. Mexico. Go to Mexico. They love Miami. They always have. And they've never seen them as motivated as they are now in the last several years. This next slide is a quick buyer profile of what we've been experiencing here in the last 12 months at Brickell City Center. These are the countries that people have bought condos. And I don't think I'm alone. I'm sharing this somewhat proprietary information with all of you because I think that you're all getting a piece of buyers from all of these locations. It says two things, particularly when you look at South and Central America. Those markets are more alive than you realized perhaps when you woke up this morning. But more than that, doesn't it speak to the popularity of Miami again? As I said at the outset of this presentation, you say Miami, people smile. God knows what's going on between your ears, but they smile. And it's not just folks from New Jersey and New York, California and Mexico that see it. Look at where we're getting buyers from. The world loves Miami, and I have a feeling it's only going to get bigger, and I'm not the only one. There's a publication that's produced out of London called the Knight Frank Report. The Knight Frank published their 2019 edition in the month of March. It's about this big, by the way. It absolutely solves insomnia. I mean, there's so much data in there. It makes the Miami report look really simple. There's a lot of variables that they put in to their algorithms and their whatever to come up with certain conclusions. But look at this conclusion. They're estimating that Miami is going to be the fastest growing luxury U.S. market this year and number 5 in the world. And folks, listen to me. When I first saw this, I didn't believe it because I didn't see London and I didn't see New York, and those are the financial capitals of the world. They are now and they will be for the rest of your lifetimes. To which Athena said, no, they're there. They're there. London is number 12 and New York is number 15. Knight Frank undoubtedly picked up on the demand curve, not the supply. Because I read the Knight Frank report. They don't have access to the information that now you have access to in terms of real housing inventory here in South Florida. But they do understand the demand curve. They do understand that. Plus a lot of other things that are going on in South Florida. And they've concluded that we happen to be selling real estate in what is arguably the fastest growing luxury real estate market in the U.S. by Knight Frank. By Knight Frank. Remember, this is not demand shock. This is supply shock. The demand curve continues to get richer, bigger, longer, stronger. It's supply that should be making us a little bit nervous. But here's the summary of those 4 numbers. 2101. At the moment, I'm not finished yet because I need you for 5 more minutes, folks. 5 more minutes. 2101, that's the amount of developer inventory remaining from Coconut Grove to Fort Lauderdale. Right below it is 902, the daily population growth in the state of Florida, which will undoubtedly eat up to 2101 before you consider South and Central America. 2020, year of our Lord, 2020. Beginning of the next decade, when the developers are hoping that they can start pre-construction sales, hoping. And if they do, and if they're successful, and if we all go as fast as we can, the earliest that they will be able to deliver thousands of units will be 2025 because we're not building little buildings anymore. The earliest. Remember, in this cycle, how many units did we build? 19,000 between Coconut Grove and Fort Lauderdale. We're not talking about a couple hundred units here. Miami and Fort Lauderdale needs thousands. Commercially, this is just a quick recap. While we're so focused on condos and houses, Miami is growing wide and growing deep. There are other sectors of the economy that are fueling housing, behaving beautifully. Retail is up 4%. Look at this American dream that's coming to North Miami. the largest mall in North America, not just the United States. This makes it's even bigger than the Mall of the Americas in Minneapolis. It's coming to North Miami. Retail is kind of a tough game these days. I know, I work with Swire, and I hear how challenging sometimes retail can be because they have a 500,000 square foot fantastic shopping center here. It's competitive, particularly in an Amazon world. And yet they've got the funding for this magnificent, oh, I'm sorry, you don't need to see the slide. I'm looking right here. I'm going on and on. I realize you don't need to see it. The American Dream in Miami, a $4 billion investment, and it's coming. Transportation, look at this, 80 million passengers passed through Miami International and Fort Lauderdale last year. So we did the 10-year challenge. Remember that thing that came out on Instagram a few months ago? What did we look like 10 years ago? Well, 10 years ago, 56 million passengers went through Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Sergio Pinto's told me 80 million is almost twice the population of Argentina that goes through our airports every year. Look at the amount of departures by state. Florida is number 3 in the country, undoubtedly, not surprising, behind New York and California. We're busy. We're very busy. Sir Richard Branson, you used to call it Brightline, now it's called Virgin. He likes South Florida. He loves South Florida. He bought Brightline. We know it's connected from Miami to West Palm, and he's going to fulfill the dream of Brightline, connected to Orlando all the way down to Tampa and back again. And he's not finished with just Brightline. He wants to get in the cruise game. Royal Caribbean, you've got some competition. Carnival, you've got some competition. And it's called Richard Branson. We are the number 1, cruise capital of North America. Look at that number, 55,800 some passengers. And one day we were 66 people short of a world record. Just the cruise industry. Other sectors, economic growth, this one I love. We're getting ready to close, but pay attention to this one. According to the Wall Street Journal, our economy is popping. We are now the 4th largest economy in the United States. But look at the one below. If the state of Florida was a country, we would be the 17th largest economy in the world. And that by itself is not very impressive, maybe. But when you put that through the 10-year challenge, we were 52 10 years ago. Somehow, some way, we went from 52 to 17 in the last 10 years as if we were a country. Fill in the blanks with me. What's it going to look like 10 years from now? What's it going to look like 10 years from now with the continued demand and population growth of Florida, met hopefully by some housing, and other sectors of the economy that continue to boom here in South Florida? The tech scene, look, now that I'm down here on Brickell, anybody here that's under 40, that you're part of the millennial generation, you know this information even better than I do. We're the number 1 city in the United States for startups, and it's not surprising to me. Hotels, we're now the 4th busiest market in the hotel industry in the United States. Not surprising. Right to your left are some of the logos of some of the brands that are enjoying some big success right now down here in South Florida. Arts and culture, you know how that's growing. We opened up the Perez Art Museum a few years ago, the Frost Science Museum. We have the Asian Arts Center, the Broward Center for the Performing Arts, which got Hamilton this year. It's growing. I moved here 30 years ago. If I wanted to see a top Broadway show, I had to get onto a plane and go to New York. It didn't exist. Well, it exists, and it's growing. Sports. This happens to be one of my favorites because sports is no longer just sports, it's entertainment. David Beckham finally got MLS to come to South Florida, and their inaugural season is next year. So now you have the top 5 sports programs, if you will: football, hockey, basketball, baseball, and MLS in Florida. And it's not just about watching your favorite team win, it's oftentimes watching the visiting team, like the Golden State Warriors, if you will, when they're playing the Miami Heat. When LeBron James played here at the Heat, I know people that flew in just to watch a game, and they stayed in one of those hotels. And if they want to stay here longer, they bought a condo. Entertainment fuels the real estate business. We all fuel each other. The Super Bowl. We're going to host the 11th Super Bowl this coming February here in Miami. The 11th. We've hosted more Super Bowls than any other city in the country. It's the big Sunday. And Miami seems to get more of it than everybody else, and I suspect we're going to continue to get more of it. Education. Education. Look at that quote up in the right-hand corner. As the wealthy flock to Miami, private schools report massive waiting lists. Ask anybody who's got a young child what it's like to get either into a magnet school in Florida or to a charter school. You're now on a waiting list. There's people from Illinois, New York, and Chicago that are coming here with their families. They're getting them on the list, and it's gotten unbelievably competitive. I mean, good grades is no longer is not the only requirement anymore. We need to build more because we're not just getting people moving here, we're getting families moving here, just like many of you. By a show of hands, just real quickly, how many in this room are born and raised in Miami? Yeah, I get the same numbers every time. So those of you that didn't raise your hands, you came here for some personal reasons. And the 902 people who are well, it's not 902 because some of those are babies, but the people who are moving here every single day have the same reasons. They just weren't as early as you, but they're coming, and they keep coming. So all of that fuels these four numbers. Because whether it's commercial, retail, sports, entertainment, hotel, all of this fuels the real estate industry that we're a part of. The Miami Report of 2019 contains all of this stuff. We are going to have it online in about a week where you can download all of these graphics. And as I've said to you for the last 10 years, this information is available for you gratis. So I'm kind of hoping whether you use this information to sell an ISG listing or you use it to sell your own, sell something. But no longer, let's not do it based on conjecture and gossip. Let's line up the facts. If we're all telling the same story based on facts, I have a feeling things are going to accelerate a little bit faster. The best opportunities right now, believe me, is developer inventory. I'll save the homework for all of you. Developers are all offering incentives right now to get that 2,100 number down to zero as quickly as they can. You've got somebody who's moving to Miami, shop the developer inventory first before you take them to MLS. The buying opportunities for the buyers are much richer with developer inventory, and the commissions for all of you are obviously better. I'm going to close with one more personal story. It's 30 years ago. I was living in New Jersey, and I was offered a job opportunity to work for my friend Jerry Kaufman, for a guy named Tom Daly, who was partners with George Perez for over 20 years. He was a genius, and he was one of my mentors. And I'm sitting at a lunch table with now the president of ISG, Michael Ambrosio. And I'm sitting there, and Mike's from New Jersey, as mine, and I'm sitting there just toiling. What do I do? What do I do? Do I go to Florida? Do I stay here in Jersey where my family and friends are? What do I do? Mike said to me in his New Jersey voice, Craigie, the future of real estate belongs to Florida. That is as true today as when Mike told me 30 years ago. Those of you that aren't in the real estate game, get in the real estate game. And those of you that are thinking about friends of yours from wherever they may be about getting into the real estate game, whether you're a broker or an investor, the future of real estate based on all of this data. Mike's right, it belongs to Florida. Anyway, in closing, I want to thank Miley Aguilar and your boss, Kieran Bowers, for allowing us to do this for actually the third year, also allowing ISG to represent you on sales. I want to thank my partner, Veronica Gorsuch, wherever she is, and her dedicated team for putting this Miami report together and actually today together for all of you. And for me, I'm hoping that this data kind of defrags all of that gossip and all that misinformation out there. Are we all going to sell Miami and Fort Lauderdale the same way? Nah, probably not. But at least we're going to do it based on real facts. Remember, we called it supply shock because it's a little bit alarming about how tight it's getting. Not demand shock. It's supply shock. You're not going to get 2019 back again. The developers are offering opportunities that, like in 2010 and 11, you're never, ever going to see again. I hope today's presentation realigns some of the facts. I hope it gives you a reason to feel good about having a real estate license in South Florida.
He really deserves a round of applause.